HOA Karen drove her shiny black SUV right across my farm. Again. Only this time, she didn't just stop to look around like she usually did. She parked it smack in the middle of my newly planted cornfield, hopped out in heels, and strutted away like she owned the place. So I did what any fed-up farmer would do. I taught her a lesson she'd never forget. By the time she came back, her car was completely gone. Not towed. Not moved to another part of the land. Just gone. She screamed so loud the goats ran. But how did I pull it off? And why did she keep parking on my land without permission? Well, let me take you back to how it all began. I live in a quiet rural town just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Nothing too fancy, just open skies, green fields, and a lot of peace and quiet. I own a small farm that's been in my family for 3 generations. It's not huge, but it's mine. I grow corn, tomatoes, and raise a few goats and chickens. Most of all, I treasure the calm lifestyle. After my dad passed, I promised him I'd keep the farm running and treat the land with love and respect. And for the most part, things were peaceful. Until the new HOA president moved in. Her real name was Linda, but everyone around here knew her as Karen. You know the type, bossy, loud, always right, and never wrong. She moved into a new development that popped up just across from my land. Fancy houses, trimmed hedges, wine moms with matching yoga mats, you get the picture. First, she was just annoying, demanding that I trim the weeds near her property line, even though it wasn't even touching her fence, complaining about the smell of goats, claiming that the rooster crowing at 5 a.m. was a violation of HOA noise ordinances, as if my farm was part of her neighborhood. Spoiler, it's not. But I stayed calm. I tried to be kind. You know, maybe she's just adjusting, I told myself. I grew up learning that kindness matters, that you don't repay rude behavior with more rudeness. My mom used to say, let them throw stones. You plant flowers with them. So I kept planting flowers, even when she tried to throw bricks. Then came the parking. One day, I was heading back to the barn with a sack of feed when I saw it. Her SUV parked on the edge of my land. Not the road. Not her driveway. My farm. I waved her down, thinking maybe she was lost. Hey, excuse me. You can't park here. It's private property. She turned to me with the fakest smile I'd ever seen. Oh, this is just for a moment. I needed to check on something nearby. It's not like I'm hurting anything. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. One time, okay, no big deal. But that one time became every other day. She started using my land as her personal parking lot whenever she had guests over and her driveway was full. Sometimes it was just her. Other times, she hosted little wine nights and people parked in my field, crushing the edges of my crops. I left signs, private property, no trespassing. I even left a note on her windshield, please stop parking here. This is a working farm. She ignored everything. It wasn't just frustrating, it was disrespectful. My dad used to say, if someone treats your land like it's worthless, they probably think you are too. But still, I tried to stay kind. I didn't call the cops. I didn't yell. I didn't key her car or throw goat poop at it, even though Lord knows I was tempted. Instead, I went to speak to her face to face. I caught her as she was unloading groceries one morning. Linda, I'm asking nicely. Please stop parking on my land. It's damaging my soil and it's just not okay. She gave me that same fake smile again. Oh, come on. It's just dirt. Don't be so dramatic. You should be happy people are even interested in your little farm. My little farm? I clenched my jaw and said nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared out the window at the corner of my land she always parked on, trying to figure out what to do. I wasn't someone who liked revenge, but I was someone who believed in consequences. And that's when I got the idea. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't violent. But it was smart. And it was going to send a message she couldn't ignore. I spent the next morning preparing. It was quiet. Just the sound of roosters, goats, and my hammer hitting wood. I rigged something up near the edge of the field, just behind the old tool shed. Something special. And I waited. Sure enough, that afternoon, she pulled up again, right onto my field, slammed the door, walked off in heels like she was stepping onto a runway. Her car sat there like a giant metal beetle sitting on my hard work. So I went to work too. 10 minutes later, her SUV was no longer where she left it. By the time she came back and realized what happened, it was already too late. "Where's my Sayar?" she screamed, spinning in circles. She stormed onto the field, stomping through the crops like a rampaging toddler. "What did you do with my car?" I stepped out from behind the tool shed, wiping sweat off my forehead. "Oh, you mean the car parked on my land without permission?" Her face turned red. Her jaw dropped. And then, something even crazier happened. Behind her, another voice called out, "Ma'am, is this your vehicle?" We both turned, and there stood Officer Daniels, our local cop. Now you might be wondering, how did he get involved? Did I call the police? No, she did. But she didn't expect what happened next. And that is where things started to really go wild. Karen's hands were on her hips, and her voice was sharp enough to slice a watermelon. "Yes, officer, that's my car. And this farmer hid it. He probably stole it or moved it somewhere to mess with me. I want him arrested for theft." Officer Daniels didn't even blink. He looked at me, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, the car was parked on his private property. He has the legal right to have it moved, especially if you've been warned before." Karen's mouth fell open like a trapdoor. "Moved? Moved where?" she shouted. I smiled gently and pointed toward the back of the barn. "You'll find it safe and sound. I had it towed by tractor." Yes. I used my old John Deere and carefully lifted the front of her SUV, one wheel at a time, using a custom-built wooden ramp I made the day before. I had a trailer bed hooked to the back. It wasn't easy. Took me almost an hour. But I moved it across the field to a fenced goat pen that wasn't in use anymore. I didn't break anything. I didn't scratch the paint. I didn't touch the inside. I just relocated it. Technically, it never left my land. She stormed off, stomping over the cornstalks that were already flattened from her SUV. Officer Daniels turned to me and gave me a slow nod. "Creative. But next time, just call me." I figured this way the lesson would stick better. "Oh, it will," he said with a chuckle. "I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong." 3 days later, just as I was finishing up loading hay into the barn, I saw her again. This time, she was holding a clipboard and taking pictures of my property. "What are you doing?" I asked, wiping sweat off my brow. "I'm documenting violations," she snapped. "This place is an eyesore. Your fencing is old. Your goats smell. And the chicken coop? Completely unsanitary. I'm reporting all of it to the HOA." I laughed out loud. "Linda, I don't live in your neighborhood. Your HOA has zero authority here." She smirked. "We'll see about that." Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. It was written on fancy paper and signed by the HOA legal team. They were requesting I attend a compliance hearing for disturbing the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. I nearly choked on my coffee. This was my land, outside the HOA borders. But still, they were trying to drag me in like I was part of their playhouse community. I went, of course, sat in a stuffy little room with Karen and 3 other board members, all looking like they'd never set foot on actual soil. She stood up first. "This farmer has continuously disturbed the peace. He owns aggressive animals, allows early morning noise pollution, and even tampered with my vehicle in an act of vengeance." I raised my hand. "Correction. I moved your vehicle off my land after you parked it there without permission. Multiple times." One of the board members, a gray-haired man in a polo shirt, looked confused. "Wait, your land isn't in our HOA boundary?" "Nope, never has been." He looked even more confused. "Then why are we here?" Karen jumped in. "Because the image of the neighborhood is affected. His messy farm lowers the value of our homes." I leaned forward. "So now it's about appearances?" The room went quiet. "Let me tell you something," I said, looking at each of them. "This land has fed families for 40 years. I grew up here. My dad grew old here. I fixed fences, planted seeds, and cared for every square foot with my hands. So if you're worried about messy, maybe try looking at the SUVs trampling my crops. No one said a word. Eventually, the gray-haired man cleared his throat. Mr. Sanders, you're right. Your land isn't under our jurisdiction. We'll close this matter. Karen looked like she was about to explode. She stood up so fast, her chair tipped. This isn't over, she hissed. And she was right, because the very next day, I woke up to spray paint on my front gate. In bright red letters, Trashy Farm. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at the gate. I won't lie, it hurt. I thought about my dad. How much pride he took in this place. How we used to stand on this very gate and watch the sunrise. To see it vandalized like this felt like someone had spat on our memories. But I didn't break down. I got to work. By noon, I had cleaned up the paint. By the evening, I had repainted the gate, even better than before. Bright green with golden edges and hand-painted sunflowers. And I added a sign. This land feeds hearts, not just bellies. Neighbors started to notice. People who had barely spoken to me before stopped to compliment the gate. One lady even brought me a basket of peaches. I saw what they did, she whispered. I just wanted to say thank you for keeping the spirit of this town alive. It meant the world to me. Things calmed down for about a week, until I saw tire tracks again. Deep, fresh, heading straight over the edge of my vegetable patch. My stomach dropped. I ran over and there it was. Karen's SUV. Once again. Parked. Right on my land. But this time, she wasn't alone. Her teenage son and two of his friends were sitting on the hood, drinking sodas and laughing. Loud music thumped from the open windows. I walked up slowly. Excuse me. You need to move this vehicle. Now. One of the boys chuckled. Relax, it's just dirt. Something in me snapped. Not with anger, but with purpose. I walked away without a word, heading toward the barn. They didn't know it yet, but I had something way bigger planned this time. And what I did next, even I wasn't sure I could pull it off. But I was about to try anyway. The moment I walked into the barn, my heart was pounding. I wasn't mad anymore. I was focused. The kind of focus my dad used to be when a storm was coming, and he had to protect everything he built in minutes. This wasn't just about a car on my land. This was about respect. About being taken seriously. I slid on my gloves, walked over to the side wall, and pulled back the dusty tarp. There it was. The old welcome wagon. It was a heavy-duty hay trailer my grandfather built back in the 60s. It hadn't moved in years, but it still had its big rubber tires and metal frame. It was built to haul firewood, hay, and once even a piano during a local parade. But today it was going to teach Karen a lesson. I hitched it to the back of my John Deere and slowly started moving toward the back field. As I passed the chicken coop, my rooster, Big Red, let out a loud crow like he knew something was about to go down. By the time I got to the edge of the field, Karen's son and his friends were still chilling on the hood of her SUV, laughing and scrolling on their phones. I stopped about 30 feet away. Boys, I called out, last warning. Move the car, or I'll move it for you. They burst out laughing. You gonna tow it with that rust bucket? One of them shouted. I smiled and said nothing. Then I drove off, but not away. I headed straight for the compost pit. See, here's something about compost. It stinks. It's made up of rotting vegetables, chicken poop, and every nasty scrap you can think of. And when it rains like it had the night before, it turns into a thick, muddy, smelly sludge. I loaded the trailer. Full. When I came back, the music was still blasting from Karen's SUV. I pulled up just close enough, put the tractor in park, and with one smooth motion, I hit the release. The rear gate on the trailer dropped open, and whoosh, a river of compost poured out. It didn't hit the SUV. That would have been too much. But it surrounded it, deep and sticky, like a moat made from garbage. The boys jumped off the hood screaming. What the? Dude, what is this? You said it was just dirt. I called back. They tried to run, slipping and sliding in the mess. One of them landed face first in the goo. I didn't laugh. Okay, maybe a little. Karen showed up 15 minutes later. The screech of her brakes could probably be heard from 3 counties away. "What is this?" she shrieked, looking at the brown sludge encircling her precious SUV. "Compost," I said calmly. "Organic. Good for the soil." "You buried my car." "No," I corrected. "I built a barrier. That car's still on my land. Just not going anywhere unless you clean up the mess." She stood frozen, mascara running slightly from the heat and humidity, mouth twitching with rage. "I'm calling the police. Be my guest." She did. Officer Daniels came back. Again. He looked at the scene, then looked at her, then looked at me. "Let me guess," he said. "You gave them a warning?" "Several." "Let me guess again," he said, turning to Karen. "You told your son it was okay to park here?" She said nothing, just stood there fuming, arms crossed, nose wrinkled like she smelled the compost. "Ma'am," Officer Daniels said, "he hasn't broken any laws. You, on the other hand, have been repeatedly warned. Trespassing, property damage, vandalism. You can't prove that paint was me." "I didn't say you did the painting," he replied calmly. "But you're giving me more reasons to start digging." Karen went quiet. "I suggest you get this cleaned up and stop parking on land that doesn't belong to you." She stormed off again, this time dragging her son by the arm. I thought maybe this would finally be over. But no. The next morning, I walked outside to the sound of hammering. I followed the noise to the edge of the field and stopped cold. Karen was building a fence. Not on her land. On mine. Wooden posts, thick metal wire. She had a crew of 2 handymen digging holes and placing boards, marking a boundary that she clearly invented. "Good morning," I said, approaching the workers. "Who hired you?" The lady in the heels," one of them said, scratching his head. "This is my land," I said, pointing at the field behind me. "That's my barn. That's my silo. And this fence is not going here." Karen walked over, face smug like she just won a game of Monopoly. "You said you didn't want people parking on your land. So I'm fencing it off, for both our sakes. You can't build on land you don't own. It's to protect your farm," she said innocently. "If you remove it, I'll report you for harassment." I pulled out my phone and began recording. "Say that again, Linda. About reporting me." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "Getting this on record. So when I sue for illegal land seizure, I'll have something to show the judge." She blinked. "You're bluffing." "Nope. In fact, I already talked to the county office last week. Had them reprint the original property survey. Would you like a copy?" Karen's confidence deflated like a leaky balloon. The workers slowly stopped hammering. "Ma'am, if this isn't your land, we really shouldn't." "Just leave it," she snapped. But they didn't. They packed up and left, heads down. Karen stood alone in the half-finished fence line. And that's when I saw something I didn't expect. She looked tired. Not angry. Not smug. Just worn down. "Why are you doing this?" I asked her. She didn't answer right away. Then she muttered something under her breath. "Because I'm losing everything." "What?" She looked away, blinking fast. "My husband left. I can't afford my house. And if property values drop, I'll be stuck here." I didn't know what to say. For a long moment we stood in silence. Just 2 people with more in common than we thought. I finally said, "You know, you could have just asked." She looked at me, confused. "If you needed help, if you needed a friend, you didn't have to be the enemy." Her eyes got glassy for a second. Then she shook her head, turned around, and walked away. I thought maybe that was the end. But 2 nights later, I was woken by flashing lights, red and blue, and the smell of smoke. I ran to the window, and my barn was on fire. I flew down the stairs, heart racing. The barn was glowing orange in the night, flames licking the roof like angry fingers reaching for the sky. The chickens were squawking. The goats were bleating. Sparks shot into the air like fireworks on the 4th of July. "No, no, no!" I yelled as I grabbed the garden hose and sprinted toward the fire. But a garden hose wasn't going to do a thing against a fire that big. Thankfully, I wasn't alone for long. Within minutes, the volunteer fire department rolled in, sirens blaring, tires digging into the dirt. Neighbors came too, people I barely talked to, rushing from their homes in pajamas and slippers, grabbing buckets and shovels, helping herd the animals away from the flames. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. By dawn, the fire was out, but the barn was gone. Just blackened beams, ash, and the broken remains of what used to be the heart of my farm. I stood there staring, my hands shaking, eyes burning. Not from smoke, but from the weight of everything. Memories, tools, family heirlooms. All gone. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was old Mr. Jenkins from down the road. "You're not alone, son," he said quietly. "We'll help you rebuild." That broke me. I nodded, but tears slipped down my face before I could stop them. Later that morning, Officer Daniels showed up again. He was already talking to the fire marshal, taking notes. "Was it the wiring?" I asked. Daniels looked serious. "No, it wasn't electrical." "What then?" He hesitated, then glanced at the charred edge of the field. "We found footprints and tire tracks. Someone drove onto your land late last night." My stomach dropped. "Are you saying it was deliberate?" He nodded slowly. "Arson." I looked at the blackened ruins, the scorched grass. My hands clenched into fists. "Do you think it was Karen?" He didn't answer right away. "I can't say anything yet, but we're investigating. I'll need your camera footage if you've got any." I did. I had a couple trail cams hidden near the tool shed and the chicken coop to keep an eye on coyotes. We spent the rest of the day reviewing the footage. Around 2:47 a.m., a vehicle pulled up, headlights off. A figure stepped out. Short, stocky, wearing a hoodie. They walked to the side of the barn and bent down near the hay bales. A moment later, there was a faint flash. Then they ran. I leaned forward, squinting. It wasn't clear. But the way the person moved, the way they carried themselves, it looked familiar. But I couldn't say for sure. Daniels sighed. "We'll check this with the rest of the footage in town. Maybe traffic cams picked up the plate. But it might take time." Time. That's what I didn't have much of anymore. The fire had destroyed my tools, some feed, and part of the irrigation system. I could still farm, but it'd be a struggle. And in the middle of all that, Karen showed up. She walked up the driveway slowly, not wearing heels for once. Just sneakers and a sweater. She stopped a few feet from the edge of the ashes and looked at what was left of the barn. "I heard," she said softly. "I'm sorry." I stared at her, not sure what to say. She looked genuinely shaken. "I know you think it was me. I don't know what to think," I said. "But I know what's happened since you moved here." She nodded. "I deserve that." Then, she surprised me again. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "There's $3,000 in here," she said. "It's all I could pull from savings. Use it to start rebuilding." I didn't move, just stared at the envelope. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. She blinked fast. "Because I need to stop being the kind of person I've been. And maybe this won't fix everything, but it's a start." I took the envelope slowly. She turned to walk away, but before she reached the end of the driveway, I called out, "If it was you who set the fire, please just say it." She stopped, turned slightly, but didn't say a word, then walked away. The silence haunted me all night. The next day, something strange happened. One of the HOA board members, Angela, a woman who always looked nervous during meetings, came by with a tray of brownies. "I heard about the fire," she said, "and I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up, and for standing your ground. A lot of us, we're tired of her too." I raised an eyebrow. "Karen?" Angela nodded. "She bullies everyone, but you pushed back. You reminded us that kindness doesn't mean weakness." That hit hard. We sat on the porch, eating brownies in silence, watching the goats munch on grass like nothing had changed. And that's when I got the call. Officer Daniels again. We pulled a partial plate from a nearby traffic camera. "We're running it now." I held my breath. "We might know whose car it was." But he didn't say who just yet. Instead, he added, "There's one more thing. We reviewed some additional footage. Looks like someone came back after the fire started. About 15 minutes later." "Back?" I asked. "Yeah, they didn't start the fire, but they saw it. And they walked away. Didn't call 911. Didn't help. Just watched." "Who was it?" He paused. "We're still trying to confirm. But it might have been Karen's son." My chest tightened. If he didn't start it, then who did? And what exactly was he doing out there at almost 3 a.m.? Something wasn't adding up. But the real twist was about to knock everything sideways. 3 days later, just when I thought I'd seen the worst of it, I heard a knock at the door. It was Officer Daniels again. But this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a teenager, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets, face pale and eyes heavy with guilt. "Karen's son." "Can we come in?" Daniels asked. I stepped aside slowly, eyes fixed on the boy. We sat at the kitchen table, the old wood creaking as Daniels laid a folder in front of me. "I wanted to bring him here personally," Daniels said, "because there's something you need to hear from him directly." The boy looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. He didn't make eye contact, just stared at the table. "I didn't start the fire," he said quietly. "Then what were you doing on my property at 3 in the morning?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. He swallowed hard. "I snuck out. Me and my friend Jake. We were gonna mess around, maybe throw some eggs at your barn. Nothing serious. Just stupid stuff." My heart sank. "Kids," he continued, voice shaky. "But when we got there, the fire had already started. We saw it." Jake panicked and ran. I stayed for a minute. I didn't know what to do. I thought if I called someone, I'd get blamed. I stared at him. "You watched my barn burn and just left?" He nodded, shame pouring off him like sweat. Daniels cleared his throat. "We checked his phone records. He didn't make any calls until the next morning. But there's something else." He opened the folder and slid over a blurry photo from a traffic cam. A silver sedan, clear as day, driving near my property minutes before the fire. "That's not his car," Daniels said. "And it's not Karen's either." "Whose is it?" I asked. He flipped to the next photo, a zoomed-in plate number, then another page with registration information. The name at the top hit me like a truck. Jake Matthews, the friend. Karen's son looked up suddenly, eyes wide. "Wait, Jake started the fire?" Daniels nodded. "He confessed this morning. Said he thought it'd be funny to scare the farmer. But the hay caught fast, and he didn't know what to do. He drove off. Couldn't believe it. One kid's idea of a joke had destroyed a legacy. But something still felt off." "Why now?" I asked. "Why come clean now?" Karen's son shifted in his seat. "Because I told him if he didn't, I would." Daniels looked at me. This boy could have stayed quiet. He didn't. He stood up. And that matters. I sat back in my chair. My feelings were a mess. Anger, relief, sadness, even a little pride. But before I could speak, the boy slid something across the table. It was a folded sheet of paper. I opened it slowly. It was a drawing. A new barn. With goats, chickens, flowers. A sun rising behind the roof. Underneath, in wobbly teenage handwriting, it said, "I'm sorry for what I didn't do. I want to help you rebuild." My throat tightened. I nodded once. "All right," I said. "Then let's rebuild." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Karen didn't show her face for a while, but her son came every morning at 7 a.m. sharp. Boots on, hammer in hand, ready to work. We laid new wood, repaired the roof, painted the beams. Angela from the HOA brought sandwiches. Mr. Jenkins loaned us tools. Even the local high school FFA club showed up to help. It wasn't just a rebuild. It was a revival. One morning, as we raised the new barn door, I saw Karen standing at the edge of the field. She didn't say a word, just watched. Her eyes met mine. She gave a small nod. I nodded back. No words, but something passed between us, maybe peace. maybe understanding, maybe a quiet truce. But just as the dust began to settle, something happened that changed everything. I got a call from a lawyer. Not mine, Karen's. At first, I thought it was about the fire or maybe the fence. But it wasn't. It was about her property. Or more specifically, about my land. "You might want to come down to the county office," the lawyer said. "There's been a discrepancy in the records." I froze. What kind of discrepancy? He cleared his throat. "According to these documents, part of your field, the side where the SUV kept parking, might actually belong to the HOA development." I blinked. What? Looks like a boundary line was redrawn 20 years ago, but it was never updated on your personal deed. Legally, you might not own that strip. My mind went blank. The land she kept parking on, the land I defended, might not be mine? He continued, "You may still have a case. Adverse possession, easement rights, but it's going to be complicated." Complicated didn't even begin to describe it. Because if that land wasn't mine, then Karen might have been right all along. But something about the timing didn't sit right with me. Why now? Why just that portion? And who benefits from the change? That's when the real suspicion started. Because what I didn't know then was that this fight was far from over.